The 1970s produced some of the biggest songs in music history, but mixed in with the classic rock anthems and disco hits were songs that left listeners scratching their heads. Lyrics that sounded like nonsense, stories that made almost no sense, words that didn't even belong to any real language, and yet somehow people loved them. Radio played them, millions bought them, and decades later they're still unforgettable. These are 10 songs from the 1970s with strange lyrics that somehow became global hits. And one of them wasn't even written in a real language.
Number 10. Prisen colinensi na insiu sol. Adriano Celentano, 1973. In 1973, Italian singer Adriano Celentano released a song that sounded like English, except it wasn't. Not even a little. Prisen colinensi na insiu sol is made entirely of gibberish words designed to sound like American English. Celentano invented the lyrics himself, intentionally stringing together syllables that resembled the rhythm and tone of English speech without actually meaning anything. The idea was surprisingly clever. Celentano wanted to show how people across Europe were absorbing American pop culture, even when they didn't fully understand the language. To him, it symbolized the growing influence of English in global music. So instead of writing real English lyrics, he wrote something that only felt like English. And it worked. The song rides on a funky groove that sounds like something halfway between James Brown-style funk and early disco. Celentano delivers the vocals like a rapid-fire rap decades before hip-hop entered the mainstream. Lines like, "Prisen colinensi na insiu sol, all right," sound strangely convincing even though they mean absolutely nothing. The real magic, though, was the performance. Celentano and dancer Raffaella Carrà performed the song on Italian television with exaggerated American-style swagger, complete with funky choreography and exaggerated lip movements. The result looked like a surreal parody of American pop music. Yet listeners loved it. The track became a major hit across Europe and later gained a second life on the internet decades later as one of the most bizarre pop performances ever recorded. A global hit, sung in a language that didn't exist. Number 9. Timothy, The Boys, 1971. Some strange lyrics are funny, some are confusing, and then there are songs like Timothy. Released in 1971 by The Boys, the song told the story of 3 miners trapped inside a collapsed mine. At first, the narrative sounds like a typical disaster ballad, men struggling to survive underground while the outside world waits for rescue. But then the story takes a very dark turn. When the mine finally opens again, only 2 of the 3 miners come out alive. The third man, Timothy, has vanished. The lyrics never explicitly say what happened to him, but the implication is impossible to ignore. The survivors may have eaten him. Yes, a top 40 hit about cannibalism. The song was written by Rupert Holmes, years before he would become famous for writing Escape, the Piña Colada song. Holmes deliberately pushed the story into disturbing territory. He later admitted he wanted to write something shocking enough to grab attention on the radio. And it worked. At first, many radio programmers didn't even notice the implication buried in the lyrics. The song sounded upbeat, almost cheerful, with a driving rock rhythm that didn't match the grim storyline. But once listeners started figuring it out, controversy followed quickly. Some stations banned the song. Others kept playing it simply because audiences were curious. Despite the backlash, Timothy climbed the Billboard Hot 100 and eventually reached number 17. Listeners couldn't quite decide whether the song was disturbing, ridiculous, or strangely fascinating, but one thing was certain. Once you heard it, you never forgot what happened to Timothy. Number 8. Werewolves of London, Warren Zevon, 1978. Some songs are strange because of what they say. Others are strange because they feel like they were written during a very strange conversation. That's exactly how Werewolves of London was born. In 1978, Warren Zevon was working on songs with 2 friends, producer Jackson Browne and guitarist Waddy Wachtel. At one point, Wachtel jokingly suggested that Zevon should write a song about a Victorian werewolf wandering around modern London. Zevon thought it was ridiculous, which is exactly why he did it. The result was a song filled with bizarre images that sound like they came from a dream after watching too many late-night horror movies. In one verse, a werewolf is drinking a piña colada at Trader Vic's. In another, he's walking through Soho looking for trouble.
I saw a werewolf with a Chinese menu in his hand.
Then comes the unforgettable chorus.
Werewolves of London.
Musically, the song is built around one of the most deceptively simple piano riffs in rock history, played by Ian Stewart, a longtime collaborator with the Rolling Stones. The groove feels relaxed and playful, almost like the band knows the entire story is absurd. But somehow it worked. The song climbed into the Billboard Top 30, becoming Zevon's biggest hit and the track most people still associate with his name today. And decades later, it remains one of the strangest songs ever to become a mainstream rock classic. A horror movie monster, casually roaming London nightlife. Only in the 1970s could that become a hit record. Number 7. Video Killed the Radio Star, The Buggles, 1979.
I heard you on the wireless back in 52.
Some strange lyrics sound mysterious. Others sound like they're predicting the future. When Video Killed the Radio Star was released in 1979, many listeners probably thought the title sounded a little dramatic, maybe even absurd. After all, radio had dominated music for decades. How could video possibly replace it? But the song's creators, Trevor Horn and Jeff Downes, weren't joking. They were imagining a future where technology would completely reshape the music industry.
Lying awake intently tuning in on you.
The lyrics paint a strange, almost nostalgic picture of musicians watching their world disappear as a new medium takes over. They took the credit for your second symphony. Video Killed the Radio Star. At the time, the concept felt oddly futuristic. The track itself sounded like it came from another planet, built around shimmering synthesizers, robotic rhythms, and a polished electronic production style that pointed toward the coming new wave era. In many ways, it sounded like the 1980s arriving early, and the public responded immediately. The single became a massive international hit, reaching number 1 in multiple countries and establishing the Buggles as one of the first breakout acts of the new synth-pop movement. But the strangest twist came 2 years later. On August 1st, 1981, when a brand new television channel dedicated entirely to music videos launched in the United States, the very first video it broadcast was Video Killed the Radio Star. The channel was called MTV. Suddenly, the strange lyrics didn't sound so strange anymore. Number 6. The Joker, Steve Miller Band, 1973. Some strange lyrics sound mysterious. Others sound like the singer is simply making things up as he goes. That's the strange charm of The Joker. Released in 1973, the song became the biggest hit for Steve Miller, climbing to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. But the lyrics feel less like a traditional story and more like a playful collection of bizarre nicknames and surreal lines. Early in the song, Miller introduces himself with a string of strange identities.
Some people call me the space cowboy. Some call me the dancer of love. Some people call me Maurice.
None of these names are ever explained. They simply appear, one after another, as if Miller is flipping through personalities like radio stations. And then things get even stranger. There's the unforgettable line. Followed by the equally odd moment where Miller describes someone as the pompatus of love. To this day, people still debate what pompatus actually means. The truth is, nobody really knows. Miller later admitted the phrase was inspired by a misheard lyric from an old doo-wop song. Instead of correcting it, he kept the nonsense word simply because it sounded good. Musically, the song rides on a laid-back blues groove with relaxed guitar and an instantly recognizable wolf whistle sound effect that became one of the most famous moments in 1970s rock radio. Despite its strange lyrics, The Joker connected with audiences everywhere. Sometimes a song doesn't need to make perfect sense. Sometimes it just needs a great groove, and a word nobody can explain. Number 5. Kung Fu Fighting, Carl Douglas, 1974.
Everybody was kung fu fighting.
Some strange songs feel like they were carefully planned. Others feel like complete accidents. Kung fu fighting belongs firmly in the second category. In 1974, Carl Douglas entered a London studio to record what was supposed to be his next single. But the song the label actually cared about was the A-side, a completely different track. Kung Fu Fighting was only meant to be a B-side filler. Producer Biddu needed something quick to complete the session, so Douglas recorded the song in just a few takes. And the lyrics? They were built around the growing obsession with kung fu movies sweeping through theaters worldwide, fueled by the popularity of Bruce Lee. The entire song basically describes a room full of people doing kung fu.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those kids were fast as lightning. In fact, it was a little bit frightening.
That's essentially the story. There's no real narrative, no deeper meaning, just a series of exaggerated descriptions of martial arts moves delivered over a funky disco groove. But something about it worked. The rhythm was irresistible. The hook was impossible to forget, and Douglas performed it with complete seriousness, as if he were narrating an epic martial arts battle. Radio stations began playing the song almost immediately. Soon it exploded across the world. Kung Fu Fighting reached #1 in the United States, topped charts across Europe, and eventually sold over 11 million copies, making it one of the best-selling singles of the decade. Not bad for a song that almost didn't make it onto the record at all. Sometimes the strangest lyrics create the biggest hits. 4. Hocus Pocus, Focus, 1971. Some strange lyrics tell bizarre stories. Others barely contain any lyrics at all. That's the strange brilliance of Hocus Pocus. Released in 1971 by the Dutch progressive rock band Focus, the song quickly became one of the most unusual hits of the entire decade. Instead of traditional verses and choruses, the track jumps wildly between musical styles, almost like several different songs stitched together at high speed. The performance is driven by guitarist Jan Akkerman, whose rapid-fire guitar lines push the track forward with almost chaotic energy. But the real star of the song is frontman Thijs van Leer, and what he does in this song is unusual. Instead of singing normal lyrics, Van Leer launches into a series of completely unpredictable sounds. There's yodeling, there's whistling, there are random shouted phrases. At one point, he even bursts into exaggerated operatic vocals before suddenly returning to yodeling again. The result sounds less like a traditional rock song and more like someone flipping rapidly between radio stations while a band desperately tries to keep up. Yet somehow the chaos works. Hocus Pocus became an international hit, reaching the top 10 in the United States and turning Focus into one of the few European progressive rock bands to break into the American charts. Listeners couldn't quite explain why they liked it, but they couldn't stop listening either. A rock hit built around yodeling, whistling, and musical chaos. Only the 1970s could make that happen. 3. Seasons in the Sun, Terry Jacks, 1974.
We've known each other since we were 9 or 10.
On the surface, Seasons in the Sun sounds warm, nostalgic, even cheerful. But once you listen closely to the lyrics, the song becomes something far stranger. Released in 1974 by Terry Jacks, the track tells the story of a man saying goodbye to the people he loves, his friend, his father, and his partner. Why? Because he's about to die. Each verse is essentially a farewell letter, reflecting on memories, regrets, and the passage of time. Yet instead of sounding dark or tragic, the song is wrapped in a bright, almost sing-along melody that feels oddly optimistic. That contrast made the lyrics feel surreal.
Learned of love and ABC, and skinned our hearts and skinned our knees.
Listeners were humming along to a song about mortality without always realizing what the story actually meant. The song itself was adapted from a French original, Le Moribond, written by the legendary Belgian songwriter Jacques Brel. Brel's version was far darker and more sarcastic, filled with bitter humor and sharp emotional edges. But when Terry Jacks recorded the English version, he softened the tone and transformed it into something more reflective, almost sentimental. The public response was enormous. Seasons in the Sun exploded on the charts, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and selling millions of copies worldwide, becoming one of the biggest hits of the decade. Yet its strange emotional mix, upbeat music paired with lyrics about saying goodbye to life, has puzzled listeners ever since. A cheerful melody, a farewell to the world, and somehow, a global pop hit. Number 2, Hooked on a Feeling, Blue Swede, 1974. Some strange lyrics appear halfway through a song, but Hooked on a Feeling announces its weirdness immediately. Before the music even properly begins, listeners hear a chorus chanting, "Ooga chaka, ooga ooga, ooga chaka." And just like that, one of the strangest intros in pop history begins. The version that became a global hit was recorded in 1974 by Swedish band Blue Swede, led by singer Björn Skifs. But the song itself actually started life as a 1968 recording by B.J. Thomas.
Deep inside of me, girl, you just don't realize.
Blue Swede's version introduced the now famous chant, inspired by a sound effect used in a previous cover by British singer Jonathan King. No one really knew what the phrase meant. It wasn't a real language. It wasn't even supposed to represent anything specific. It simply sounded rhythmic, tribal, and strangely hypnotic. And it worked. Once the chant ends, the song shifts into a smooth pop groove about falling deeply in love, fairly normal territory for 1970s radio. But that opening stayed with listeners. You didn't just hear the song, you remembered it. The track climbed all the way to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, becoming the first Swedish act ever to reach the top of the American charts. Decades later, the strange intro found a new audience when the song appeared prominently in the soundtrack of Guardians of the Galaxy, a love song with a chorus that sounds like a prehistoric chant. And somehow, it became one of the most recognizable pop hits of the decade. Number 1, Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen, 1975. Some songs have strange lines. Bohemian Rhapsody has an entire universe of them. Released in 1975 and written by Freddie Mercury, the song didn't just break the rules of pop music, it ignored them completely. At over 6 minutes long, with no traditional chorus and multiple musical sections stitched together, it sounded more like a miniature rock opera than a radio single. And then there were the lyrics. The story begins with a confession. Mama just killed a man. From there, the song spirals into a surreal sequence of operatic references, mysterious characters, and phrases that still puzzle listeners today. Suddenly we hear names like Scaramouche, references to Galileo, and repeated cries of Bismillah. Then comes the operatic chaos. Scaramouche, Scaramouche, will you do the fandango? Thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening me. None of it follows a clear narrative. Even Mercury himself refused to explain what the lyrics meant. Bandmates later admitted they weren't entirely sure either, but the music carried everything forward. Produced by Roy Thomas Baker, the recording required weeks of complex studio work, layering hundreds of vocal harmonies to create the dramatic operatic section that sits in the middle of the track. Despite its bizarre structure and surreal lyrics, the song became an enormous success. Bohemian Rhapsody reached #1 in the UK, eventually becoming one of the best-selling singles in British history and one of the most iconic recordings in rock music. A murder confession, an operatic battle, a head-banging guitar finale. And somehow, it became one of the biggest hits of the 1970s.